The mop bucket wheels squeaked against the polished floor as Robert Hayes pushed it down the empty corridor. His shift ended in 2 hours, and he still had 3 sections to clean before he could go home. The night shift suited him fine. No crowds, no questions, just him and the silence of Helio 7 Medical Station while everyone else slept. He turned into the restricted wing where the xenobiology labs were located. This area always gave him an uneasy feeling, but the pay was good and the work was simple. Keep your head down, clean the floors, empty the waste bins, and mind your own business. That was how Robert had survived the last 5 years since leaving Earth. A sound stopped him mid-push. It came from somewhere ahead, deep and rumbling like distant thunder. Robert frowned. The lab should be empty at this hour. He left his bucket and walked forward slowly, his hand reaching for the communicator on his belt. Station security should know if something was loose in here. The sound came again, but this time Robert heard something else beneath it. Words, broken and desperate, but definitely words in standard galactic language. He rounded the corner and froze. A creature the size of a small transport vehicle lay curled in the maintenance corridor. Red scales covered its body, each one as large as Robert's hand. Wings were folded tight against its sides, and a long tail wrapped protectively around something small. The head lifted as Robert approached, and intelligent eyes met his, eyes filled with pain and desperation. "Please," the creature said, its voice rough and accented. "My child dying." Robert's heart hammered in his chest. He knew what this was. A draken. He had seen pictures in the station databases, but never in person. Most species avoided drakens. Old wars, older grudges, treaties that banned them from most civilized stations. "How did you get in here?" Robert asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Does not matter," the draken said. She shifted slightly, and Robert saw the small form she was protecting. A hatchling, no bigger than a large dog, lay trembling against her. Its scales were turning gray, and its breathing came in shallow gasps. "They will not help," I asked. They said no. No treaty, no treatment. But she dies. My Nira dies. Robert stepped closer despite every instinct telling him to run. The hatchling's eyes were closed, and foam flecked the corners of its mouth. He had seen symptoms like this before, back when he worked as a paramedic on Earth. Poisoning, definitely poisoning. "What happened to her?" he asked. The Draken mother, Sira, lowered her massive head. "Rival clan. They put poison in her food. I brought her here. Flew 3 days without stopping. But the doctors, they turned us away. Said regulations, said no diplomatic status. I hid here hoping, praying someone would help." Robert's mind raced. He should call security. This was not his problem. He was just a janitor. But as he looked at the dying hatchling, another face flashed in his memory. His daughter, Emily, small and fragile in a hospital bed 7 years ago. The doctors had said they needed approval for the experimental treatment. It took too long. The approval came 3 days after Emily died. "Let me see her," Robert said quietly. Sierra's eyes widened. "You will help?" I said, "Let me see her." Robert knelt beside the hatchling, careful to keep his movements slow. Sarah watched him like a hawk, but allowed him to approach. He gently touched the hatchling's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. The scales under his fingers were cold. "What kind of poison?" Robert asked. "From our world. A plant called deathshade. It grows in the northern valleys. They crush the leaves into her meat." Robert closed his eyes and thought. Deathshade. He did not know that plant. But the symptoms matched organophosphate poisoning. If Draken biology was anything like Earth reptiles, and if he was right about the poison type, then maybe, just maybe, he could help. "I need to get some things," he said, standing up. "Medical supplies. Chemicals from the maintenance storage." "Can you stay hidden here for another hour?" Sarah's voice cracked. "You truly will help us, but why? Your kind and mine, we have no bond, no treaty. You risk much." Robert pulled out his wallet and showed Syra a photo. A young girl with bright eyes and a missing front tooth smiled at the camera. Her name was Emily. She was 8 when she died because people cared more about rules than about saving her life. "I will not let that happen again. Not if I can stop it." Tears rolled down Sierra's scaled cheeks. "I do not understand humans. But I am grateful. Save your gratitude. I might fail. I am not a doctor anymore, just a janitor who remembers some things. But I have to try." Robert returned to his bucket and grabbed his communicator. He turned it off and removed the battery. No tracking. No questions. He pushed the bucket back toward the supply rooms, his mind already making calculations. Atropine from the emergency medical supplies. Activated charcoal from the water filtration system. Saline solution. He would need to break into 3 different locked storage areas, and he would need to do it without triggering any alarms. As he walked, Robert realized his hands were not shaking. For the first time in 5 years, he felt like himself again. Not the broken man who hid in the shadows, but the person who had once believed that every life was worth fighting for. Behind him, Sarah curled tighter around her dying child and whispered a prayer to the old Draken gods. She prayed that this human, this unlikely savior in janitor's clothes, would be the miracle her daughter needed. Robert's hands moved with practiced efficiency as he sorted through the supplies he had gathered. 3 locked storage rooms had yielded what he needed, and his old emergency medical override codes, surprisingly, still worked in the station's outdated security system. He had always meant to tell someone about that vulnerability, but tonight he was grateful for his own procrastination. The emergency medical kit sat open on the floor of the maintenance corridor. Beside it were 2 bottles of chemicals from the water treatment facility and a portable analysis scanner he had borrowed from the xenobiology lab. Borrowed, not stolen, he told himself, though he knew that distinction would not matter much if he got caught. Sierra watched him with anxious eyes as he prepared the makeshift antidote. Nira's breathing had become even more shallow in the hour Robert had been gone. Time was running out. Her temperature is dropping, Sierra said, her voice tight with fear. Among my people, that is a very bad sign. Robert nodded, not looking up from his work. He was mixing atropine with a saline solution, adjusting the dosage based on his best guess of the hatchling's body weight. Too little and it would not work. Too much and he could stop her heart entirely. The margins for error were razor thin. I need you to tell me about your people's medicine, Robert said as he worked. Do you use any treatments for this poison on your world? Sierra's tail twitched. Yes, there is a flower that grows near the death shade plant. We call it Life-Bringer. Its nectar neutralizes the poison. But there are no such flowers here. This station is metal and glass and recycled air. Robert paused. A natural antidote growing near the poison. That was common in nature. Evolution's way of maintaining balance. But what properties would such a flower have? He thought about earth plants with similar relationships. Activated charcoal could absorb toxins, but he needed something to counteract the specific effects of the poison. Does this flower make you feel energized? Does it speed up your heart? Robert asked. Yes. Warriors sometimes chew the petals before battle. It makes them strong and quick, a stimulant. Robert's mind raced. He had atropine, which would block some of the poison's effects on the nervous system. But he also needed something to support the hatchling's failing cardiovascular system. He looked through the medical kit again and found epinephrine. Dangerous, but in tiny doses it might work. I am going to try something, Robert said. But you need to understand, I am guessing. I am making connections between earth medicine and what little I know about your people. I could be wrong. Sierra lowered her massive head until it was level with Robert's face. Her breath was hot and her teeth were as long as his fingers. If you do nothing, she dies. If you try and fail, she dies. At least if you try, there is a chance. I would rather die with hope than live with regret. Robert held her gaze. All right then. Hold her steady. He filled a syringe with his prepared mixture and approached the tiny hatchling. Nira barely moved as he gently lifted her small arm, searching for a vein. Draken anatomy was different from human, but the basic principles were the same. Every creature needed to transport blood through its body. He found what he hoped was a vein and carefully inserted the needle. Nira twitched but did not wake. Robert slowly pressed the plunger, watching the fluid disappear into the hatchling's body. When the syringe was empty, he withdrew it and applied pressure to the injection site. Now we wait, Robert said quietly. Sierra curled around her daughter, humming a low melody that vibrated through the floor. It was a song, Robert realized, though unlike any music he had heard before. It spoke of home and safety, of mother's love and ancient skies. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Nira's breathing did not change. Robert checked her pulse again, still weak, still irregular. Doubt crept into his mind. What if he had guessed wrong? What if Draken biology was too different from anything he knew? What if he had just used up their only chance? Tell me about her, Robert said, needing to fill the terrible silence. Tell me about Nira. Sierra's eyes never left her daughter. She is curious, always asking questions, always exploring where she should not go. Last month she climbed into a fuel pod and fell asleep. We searched for 6 hours before we found her curled up and snoring. A sound that might have been a laugh escaped Syra's throat. She loved stories about the old days when Drakons flew between the stars with no ships, just our wings and the solar winds. That is possible? Robert asked, genuinely curious. Not anymore. The radiation is too strong now and space too cold. But once, yes. Once we danced among the stars. Sierra's voice grew soft. I want Nira to know those stories. I want her to grow strong and fierce and gentle. I want her to see the old mountains of our world and swim in the crystal lakes. I want her to have time. Robert touched the small photo in his pocket. I wanted those things for my daughter too. Time. That is all any parent wants. Just more time. Suddenly, Nira coughed. It was a weak sound, but it was something. Her eyes fluttered open just for a moment, and Robert saw they were a deep amber color. Beautiful. Mama. The word was barely a whisper. Syra made a sound like a sob and a roar combined. I am here, little flame. Mama is here. Robert checked Nira's pulse again. Stronger, definitely stronger. Her breathing was deeper too, and the gray color of her scales seemed less pronounced. It was working. By some miracle, it was actually working. She needs fluids and rest, Robert said, relief flooding through him. The poison is still in her system. This just bought us time. She needs proper treatment. The kind I cannot give her here. Syra looked at him with gratitude and fear mixed together. The doctors will not help. You know this. Then we need to change their minds, Robert said, though he had no idea how. A sound echoed from the far end of the corridor. Footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving quickly. Security patrol, right on schedule. Robert and Syra locked eyes. Their time had just run out. Robert grabbed his mop and bucket and walked toward the approaching footsteps with forced casualness. His heart pounded, but years of staying invisible had taught him how to control his face and body language. Just a janitor doing his job. Nothing to see here. 2 security officers rounded the corner. One was a tall cretin with blue skin and 4 arms. The other was a stocky human woman Robert vaguely recognized from shift changes. They both carried stun batons on their belts. Working late, Hayes? The human officer asked. Her name badge read Phillips. Same as always, Robert replied, pushing his mop across the floor. Xenobiology wing does not clean itself. The cretin officer, whose name was Tolvin, tilted his head. We received an alert about unauthorized access to medical supplies. 3 storage units, all accessed within the last 2 hours using override codes that should not exist anymore. Robert kept mopping. Sounds like a security problem. You should probably check the computer systems. I hear they are due for an update. Phillips stepped closer. The thing is, Hayes, those codes were linked to a paramedic named Robert Hayes who worked on Earth 7 years ago. Same name as you. Strange coincidence. Very strange, Robert agreed, his mind racing. Behind him down the corridor, Syra would be listening. If she ran, they would chase her. If she stayed, they would find her. Either way, this ended badly. Tolvin moved past Robert, his hand resting on his stun baton. We need to sweep this sector. Station protocols. You can finish your cleaning elsewhere. Actually, Robert said, making a decision that could not be taken back. I think you should see something first. He led them down the corridor toward where Syra waited with Nira. Phillips and Tolvin exchanged glances but followed. As they rounded the corner, both officers immediately drew their weapons. Syra rose to her full height, placing herself between the officers and Nira. Her wings spread wide, making her look enormous in the confined space. If you want my child, you go through me first. Stand down. Tolvin shouted. You are in violation of station regulations. Unauthorized presence, restricted area, potential biological hazard. She is not a hazard, Robert said calmly. She is a mother with a sick child who came here begging for help. Help that was denied. Phillips kept her weapon trained on Syra. Hayes, step away from the creature. That is an order. No. The single word hung in the air. Robert had spent 5 years following orders, keeping his head down, being invisible. That version of himself felt very far away now. Her daughter was poisoned, Robert continued. She flew 3 days straight to get here because this station is supposed to be the best medical facility in this sector. But the doctors turned her away because of some diplomatic status nonsense. So I helped. I gave the hatchling medicine. She's stable now, but she needs proper treatment. Tolvin's forearms tensed. You administered medical treatment without authorization? Do you have any idea how many regulations you just broke? Yes, Robert said. And I would break them again. Phillips lowered her weapon slightly. Robert saw conflict in her eyes. Hayes, I get it, I do. But we have rules for reasons. Interspecies medicine is complicated. You could have killed that thing. Her name is Nira, Robert said sharply. And yes, I could have killed her. I could also have done nothing and watched her die. Tell me, Officer Phillips, which choice would have let you sleep at night? Before Phillips could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. What is happening here? Dr. Amelia Wright appeared behind the officers, her lab coat marked with various chemical stains. She was the station's head xenobiologist, and Robert had cleaned her lab for 3 years without exchanging more than basic pleasantries. Dr. Wright, Tolvin said, this area is under security lockdown. Please return to your quarters. Amelia ignored him and pushed past, her eyes widening as she saw Sira and Nira. She approached slowly, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. A Draken, a juvenile Draken, on this station. That is what I said, Tolvin muttered. Unauthorized presence. Amelia knelt beside Nira, who was breathing more steadily now. What happened to her? Poisoning, Robert said. Deathshade plant from their homeworld. I gave her atropine and a small amount of epinephrine mixed with saline. It stabilized her, but she needs more. Amelia's head snapped toward Robert. You did what? Hayes, you are a janitor. How do you even know those drugs? I used to be a paramedic. Before I came here. She studied him for a long moment, then turned to Sira. May I examine your daughter? Sira hesitated, then nodded. Amelia pulled a portable scanner from her coat pocket and ran it over Nira's small body. She made small noises as she read the results, some concerned, some impressed. This is fascinating, Amelia said, and terrifying. Hayes, you guessed right about the treatment, but this poison has a secondary compound. It activates hours after the first symptoms. Without proper medical equipment, this hatchling will die within the next 12 hours. Then we get her to the medical bay, Robert said. Tolvin shook his head. Medical Director Quinn already refused treatment. Drakens are classified as non-allied combatants. Treaty violations. It is above my pay grade, but those are the rules. Then we change the rules, Amelia said firmly. She stood and faced the officers. I am the head xenobiologist on this station. I am declaring this a medical emergency and a research opportunity. This hatchling needs treatment, and I am volunteering to provide it. Dr. Wright, you cannot just— Yes, I can. Check your regulations, Officer Tolvin. Scientific research falls under different protocols than general medical care. I am making this an official xenobiology case study. Phillips and Tolvin looked at each other. Phillips shrugged. It is a loophole. Probably will not hold up under review, but it is technically legal. Tolvin sighed, all forearms dropping to his sides. Fine, but this goes on record, all of it. And when the higher-ups come asking questions, I am telling them exactly what happened. Fair enough, Amelia said. She turned to Robert. Help me move her to my lab. We have work to do. As they carefully lifted Nira, Sira spoke softly. Why do you help us? You do not know us, Amelia smiled. Because Hayes is right. Rules are important, but they should not come before compassion. Besides, I became a scientist to learn about other species. Not to let them die because of politics. Robert said nothing. But as they carried Nira down the corridor, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Amelia's laboratory smelled like chemicals and growing things. Plants from a dozen worlds grew under special lights along one wall, part of her research into alien botanicals. She had cleared a large examination table in the center of the room, and Nira now lay there. Breathing steadily but still too weak to move much, Sira stood nearby, trying to make herself smaller in the cramped space. Her tail was coiled tight and her wings pressed against her back. Every few seconds she would reach out with one clawed hand to gently touch Nira, as if reassuring herself that her daughter was still alive. Robert watched from the corner as Amelia worked. She had connected various monitors to Nira, and screens displayed information that Robert could only partially understand. Amelia muttered to herself as she studied the data, occasionally making notes on a digital pad. The secondary compound is nasty, Amelia said, without looking up. It targets the respiratory system, basically causes the lungs to slowly fill with fluid. Left untreated, she would drown in her own body. Can you stop it? Sarah asked, her voice tight. Yes, but I need to synthesize an antagonist based on the chemical structure of the poison. That takes time. I also need a sample of that flower you mentioned. The life-bringer plant. Sarah shook her head. I have none. It only grows on my world, and that is 15 light-years from here. Amelia tapped her fingers on the table, thinking. Robert, you said you stabilized her using atropine and epinephrine. That should not have worked as well as it did. There must be something about Draken biology that made your treatment more effective than it should have been. Robert moved closer to the screens. What if their metabolism is faster than ours? The drugs would work quicker, stronger. That is why the poison is so dangerous to them, but also why a small amount of stimulant had such a good effect. That makes sense, Amelia said, her eyes lighting up. If I can map out the metabolic pathways, I can design a treatment that works with their biology instead of against it. She turned to Sarah. I need your help. I need you to tell me everything you know about Draken medicine. Every plant, every treatment, every home remedy. For the next hour, Sarah described her people's healing practices. She spoke of herbs that reduced fever, stones that were heated and placed on wounds, songs that calmed the mind and slowed the heart. Amelia recorded everything, asking questions, making connections between Draken medicine and the scientific principles she knew. Robert mostly listened, but occasionally he would offer suggestions based on his own medical training. Together, the three of them began to piece together a treatment plan. Halfway through, the laboratory door opened. Medical Director Quinn strode in, his face set in hard lines. He was a Centaurian, humanoid but with slightly elongated features and pale green skin. Behind him came 3 security officers, though none of them were Talvin or Phillips. Dr. Wright, Quinn said coldly. I received a report about unauthorized activities in your lab, specifically the treatment of a prohibited species. Amelia did not look up from her work. This is a scientific research project, Director. Well within my authority. That is a very generous interpretation of station regulations. Quinn moved closer to the examination table, looking down at Nira with barely disguised disgust. Drakens are classified as non-allied combatants. We do not treat them here. We have never treated them here. That policy exists for good reasons. What reasons? Robert asked. What reason justifies letting a child die? Quinn turned his cold gaze on Robert. You must be Hayes, the janitor who thinks he is still a paramedic. I should have you arrested for what you did. Breaking into storage facilities, stealing medical supplies, administering treatment without license or authorization. Then arrest me, Robert said calmly. But first explain to this mother why her child is not worth saving. It is not about worth, Quinn said. It is about precedent. If we treat this Draken, every species that we have treaties against will demand the same. We will be overwhelmed. Our resources are limited, Hayes. We have to make choices. Sarah spoke up, her voice shaking with controlled rage. My people offered you a treaty 40 years ago. You refused. You said we were too dangerous, too unpredictable. But the real reason was fear. You feared what we could become if we joined the galactic community, so you isolated us, and now you use that isolation as an excuse to let our children die. Quinn's face flushed. Your people have a history of violence. The border wars, the colonial conflicts, we have not forgotten. Neither have we, Sarah said. We have not forgotten that it was your people who started those wars, who came to our worlds demanding resources, who treated us like animals to be tamed or destroyed. My people wanted peace. We still want peace. But peace requires both sides to try. Silence filled the laboratory. Even Quinn seemed at a loss for words. Amelia stood up and faced the medical director. Sir, with respect, this is not your decision to make. This is a research project under my authority. The hatchling stays in my lab until I complete my work. Dr. Wright, I can have your credentials suspended for this. Then do it. But you will have to explain to the Galactic Science Council why you prioritized politics over scientific advancement. I am documenting a completely new approach to interspecies toxicology. This research could save thousands of lives across multiple species. Are you really willing to stop that because of old grudges? Quinn looked between Amelia, Robert, and Sarah, his jaw clenched. Fine, you have 24 hours. If that creature is not stable and off this station by then, I will have it removed by force, and all of you will face formal charges. He turned and left, the security officers following him. As the door closed, Amelia let out a long breath. 24 hours, she said. We better get to work. Robert nodded and moved to help, but Sira stopped him with a gentle touch of her claw on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said quietly. "No matter what happens, thank you for giving us a chance." Robert thought of his daughter again. Of all the chances Emily never got. "Every child deserves a chance," he said. "Every single one." They returned to work, racing against time and politics, fighting to save a life that most of the galaxy had decided was not worth saving. 16 hours had passed. Robert's eyes burned from exhaustion, and his hands shook as he held the beaker steady for Amelia. They had synthesized 3 different versions of the antidote, each one a failure. Nira's condition had stabilized but not improved. The fluid in her lungs was building slowly, and time was running out. Sira had not moved from her daughter's side except when Amelia needed to work directly on Nira. She sang softly, old songs in a language Robert did not understand, but the meaning was clear. Songs of love, songs of hope, songs of a mother's heart. "This is not working," Amelia said, frustration clear in her voice. She threw down her stylus and rubbed her eyes. "I am missing something. Some key component that makes the natural flower work, but my synthetic version does not." Robert looked at the screen showing Nira's vital signs. Her oxygen levels were dropping. They had maybe 6 hours left. Maybe less. "What if it is not about the chemicals?" Robert said slowly. "What if the flower works because of how it grows? Where it grows?" Amelia looked at him. "What do you mean?" "On Earth, some plants develop specific properties based on their environment. A plant that grows in toxic soil might develop natural filters. What if the life-bringer flower grows near the deathshade plant, because it specifically evolved to counter that poison?" "That is brilliant," Amelia said, new energy in her voice. "But we do not have access to the actual flower, so how does that help us?" Robert thought hard. "The deathshade plant. Does it exist anywhere else? Any database, any botanical collection?" Amelia's fingers flew across her console. "Let me check." She searched through multiple databases, her frown deepening with each negative result. Then her eyes widened. "Wait, the station has a restricted botanical vault. Samples from dangerous plants across the galaxy. I need special permission to access it, but..." She pulled up another screen. "There, Deathshade. 3 samples collected 20 years ago during a survey mission. Can you get to it?" Robert asked, "Not legally. The vault is locked down tighter than the medical bay. I would need Director Quinn's authorization, and he is not going to give it." Sira stood up suddenly, her full height making both humans step back. "Then we take it. We have come this far. We do not stop now." "That is theft," Amelia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Major theft. Career-ending theft. Better than letting Nira die," Robert said. They looked at each other, and Robert saw the moment Amelia made her decision. She straightened her shoulders and grabbed her lab coat. "The vault is 3 levels down. Security changes shifts in 20 minutes. That is our window." "I will come with you," Sira said. "No," Amelia replied firmly. "You are too recognizable. If anyone sees you, they will lock down the entire station. You stay here with Nira. Robert and I will go." Sira wanted to argue, but she knew Amelia was right. She nodded reluctantly and curled protectively around her daughter. Robert and Amelia moved quickly through the empty corridors. It was deep into the night cycle, and most of the station slept. They took maintenance passages that Robert knew well from his cleaning routes, avoiding the main hallways where security cameras were more numerous. The botanical vault was located in a restricted section of the research wing. Amelia used her credentials to get them through the first 2 security doors, but the vault itself required biometric authorization that she did not have. "Now what?" Robert asked. Amelia smiled grimly and pulled out a small device from her pocket. "I built this for a different project. It can spoof biometric readers. Probably illegal. Definitely against station regulations. You are full of surprises, Doctor. I did not become a xenobiologist to follow all the rules, Hayes." The device worked. The vault door opened with a soft hiss, and they stepped into a climate-controlled room filled with specimens and stasis fields. Each sample was labeled and locked in its own containment unit. They found the Deathshade samples quickly. 3 sealed containers holding dried plant material. Amelia grabbed all 3 and stuffed them into her bag. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "Security breach detected," a computerized voice announced. "Botanical vault. All units respond. Run!" Amelia shouted. They sprinted back through the corridors, but security teams were already mobilizing. Robert could hear boots pounding on metal floors, getting closer. They would never make it back to the lab in time. This way, Robert said, pulling Amelia into a side passage. It was a waste processing tunnel, cramped and dark, but it led directly to the laboratory wing without going through any major checkpoints. They crawled through the tunnel, their hands and knees scraping on rough metal. Behind them, voices shouted orders. Ahead, dim light marked the exit. They emerged in a storage room 2 doors down from Amelia's lab. Alarms still rang throughout the station, but the immediate pursuit had fallen behind. They ran the last distance and burst through the laboratory door. Syra stood ready, clearly prepared to fight if necessary. Did you get it? Yes, Amelia gasped, pulling the containers from her bag. She moved to her workstation and began the process of extracting the active compounds from the Deathshade samples. If I am right, the plant itself will have trace amounts of the Lifebringer flower's chemicals. They grow together, so cross-contamination is inevitable. Robert watched the door, expecting security to break through at any moment. But minutes passed, 5, 10. The alarms continued, but no one came. They are searching the main corridors, Robert realized. They have not figured out we came back here yet. Amelia worked frantically, her hands steady despite the pressure. She mixed, filtered, analyzed, and synthesized. On the examination table, Nira's breathing became more labored. Fluid bubbled at the corners of her mouth. Almost there, Amelia whispered. Come on, come on. Finally, she held up a syringe filled with pale blue liquid. This is it. This has to work. She approached Nira carefully and administered the injection. Then they waited. All 3 of them, barely breathing, watching the small hatchling fight for her life. 1 minute passed. 2. 3. Nira coughed, once, twice. Fluid sprayed from her mouth and she gasped. Her eyes opened, clear and bright. The gray color faded from her scales, replaced by healthy crimson. Mama, Nira said, her voice weak but steady. Syra made a sound between a sob and a roar. She gathered her daughter close, tears streaming down her scaled face. The laboratory door burst open. Security teams poured in, weapons drawn, but they were too late. Nira was saved. Security Chief Tolvin stood in the doorway, his forearms crossed. Behind him, a dozen officers waited for orders. But Tolvin did not give any. He simply watched as Syra held her daughter, as Nira's small voice asked for water, as Amelia checked the monitors and smiled with relief. She is going to live, Amelia said, looking at Tolvin. We saved her, and broke approximately 30 station regulations in the process, Tolvin replied. But his voice lacked anger. He sounded tired more than anything else. Medical Director Quinn pushed through the security officers. His face was red with fury. Arrest them. All of them. They stole from the botanical vault. They ignored direct orders. They saved a child's life. Tolvin interrupted quietly. Quinn stared at him. Excuse me? I said they saved a child's life. That hatchling was dying. The doctors refused to help. These 3 people, they refused to accept that. They broke rules, yes, but sometimes rules are wrong. You cannot be serious, Quinn said. You are the security chief. Enforcing rules is your entire job. Tolvin looked at Nira, now drinking water with her mother's help. My job is to protect the people on this station. All people. I'm starting to think we need to expand our definition of people. Before Quinn could respond, Officer Phillips stepped forward. Sir, we have a situation. The story leaked. Someone recorded Hayes's initial confrontation with you in the corridor. It went out on the station's public network. Now it is spreading to other stations. People are watching. What? Quinn pulled out his communicator and pulled up the network. His face went pale. Robert moved closer and saw the screen. A video showed him standing up to Quinn, defending Syra and Nira. The comments section was exploding with responses from dozens of species across multiple stations. Most were supportive. Some were angry, but not at Robert. This is outrageous, one comment read. A child was dying and they refused help. Humans might not be the strongest or smartest, but they have hearts, another said. This janitor has more honor than your entire medical staff. My people remember when we were outcasts too, wrote someone with a Valtorian ID. The humans helped us then. They help everyone. That is their gift to the galaxy. The comments kept coming. Hundreds, then thousands. The story was spreading faster than anyone could control. Director Quinn's communicator buzzed. He answered it, listened for a moment, then his face went even paler. "Yes, Counselor. I understand. Yes, I will handle it immediately." He ended the call and looked at Robert, Amelia, and Syra with something that might have been grudging respect. "The Galactic Medical Council is launching an investigation into station policies. They want a full report on this incident. They are also," he paused, clearly hating every word, "commending the actions taken to preserve the hatchling's life." "So we are not under arrest?" Amelia asked. "You are all suspended pending formal review," Quinn said stiffly. "But given the circumstances and the public attention, I have been advised to handle this delicately." He looked at Syra. "Your daughter needs continued care. We will provide it officially." Syra bowed her head. "Thank you." Quinn left without another word, and the security officers dispersed. Only Tolvin remained. "For what it is worth," Tolvin said to Robert, "you did the right thing. Not the legal thing, not the easy thing, but the right thing. That matters." After he left, the three of them collapsed into chairs. The adrenaline was wearing off, and exhaustion hit like a wave. "What happens now?" Amelia asked. "Now?" Robert looked at Nira, who was already looking stronger. "Now we make sure this never happens again." Over the next 3 days, the story continued to spread. News agencies across the galaxy picked it up. The human act of compassion toward a species most others feared became a symbol of something larger. Debates raged in council chambers about medical ethics, about treaties and grudges, about what it meant to be civilized. The Draken homeworld sent an official delegation. They arrived in a massive ship and requested a meeting with Robert, Amelia, and Syra. The delegation leader was an ancient Draken named Korvash, scarred from old battles but with eyes that held deep wisdom. "You have changed something," Korvash said to Robert. "You have given my people hope that we are not forever outcasts. The young human who saw a child, not a monster. That matters more than you know." Robert did not know what to say to that. He was just a janitor who remembered being a paramedic, who remembered losing his daughter and refused to let another parent feel that pain. The Galactic Medical Council passed new regulations. Emergency care could not be denied based on political status. The Hayes Directive, they called it, named after a janitor who broke the rules because the rules were broken. Syra and Nira stayed on the station for 2 more weeks, until Nira was fully healed. On the day they left, Syra performed a ceremony from her people's tradition. She removed a scale from her chest, a large red scale that shimmered in the light, and gave it to Robert. "This marks you as clan friend," Syra said. "Among my people it is the highest honor. It means you are family. It means you will always have a home among the Drakens." Nira hugged Robert's leg, careful with her small claws. "Thank you for saving me," she said in careful standard galactic. "I will remember you always." Robert knelt and hugged her back. "Grow strong, little one. See those crystal lakes your mother told me about? Hear all the old stories, live." After they left, Robert returned to his quarters. The scale Syra had given him sat on his small desk, next to the photo of Emily. 2 children worlds apart but connected by the simple truth that every life mattered. Amelia stopped by that evening. "The station offered me my job back. Full reinstatement. They also offered you a position in medical services. Seems they need someone who remembers what medicine is supposed to be about." Robert thought about it, about going back to medicine, about using his skills again, about being visible instead of invisible. It scared him, but it also felt right. "I will think about it," he said. 3 months later, the first joint human-Draken medical exchange program was announced. Robert was chosen to lead the human side. He accepted. On his first day in his new role, he kept his old janitor's uniform in his locker, a reminder that heroism did not require a title or credentials. It only required caring enough to act when others would not. The station continued its daily operations. Ships came and went. Dozens of species lived and worked together. But something had shifted. People looked at each other differently. They asked harder questions about rules and who those rules served. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a young Draken hatchling grew stronger each day, living proof that sometimes the bravest act is simply refusing to look away from suffering. That one person, even just a janitor, could change the galaxy by choosing compassion over convenience. By seeing a child instead of a classification. By remembering that every parent's love is the same. no matter how many legs they walk on or how many scales cover their skin. Robert Hayes was just a janitor. Until he was not. Until he became something more. Not because he wanted fame or recognition, but because when a desperate mother begged for help, he was the only one brave enough to say yes.